Hey guys, hope you all are doing great. In this video, we are going to take up few of the questions which have been asked by Priya on AMA series, Ask Me Anything series. And if you also want to ask any question, you want to know the answers basically, you can go ahead and you can go and comment that video. I'll be definitely able to take up and then we'll do a video for you basically. All right. So uh, what we will do is in this video we there are several questions basically which she wanted me to just kind of answer all of them, but due to time constraint and the length of the video, keeping that in mind, I think we will not be able to cover entire questions here, but we will be doing in parts basically. So in part 1 today we'll be taking up 4 questions here, all right, and then in the remaining parts we will start from fifth question onward, all right. So let's start then. Okay, so quickly we will read through the question and then we will go to basically the one by one and then try to understand. All right. First question, tell me your end-to-end testing process. Now, this is just a very big question basically, right? Very big answer to this. Basically, you have to explain. At least you will take 5 to 6 minutes of time to actually answer this question, right? Because you have to be very elaborative here, because they want to understand whether you have really worked on your project. If you have worked on it, then you will be able to specify or be able to talk about it from start to end, right? Now we'll look at this basically. And the second question is, what is data profiling in ETL testing? Very interesting question, right? Now third one, when you will get requirement, what will you do? Which means basically what basically you do once you receive the requirement from developer or BS as part of QA engineer. What are your steps that you perform basically? Okay, so this is as simple as that. Now fourth question, how do you validate your source data? Which means basically they want to ask you what are the checks that you perform on the source data. They are not talking about ETL process or X transformation or loading part. They are actually talking about the source data. All right. So we'll look at each of them. I think it is very interesting question. And thanks Priya for asking these questions. I think these are not, I'm sure these are not only your question, but I think question of majority of the people who are watching this video now, right? So you all might be having the same questions basically. So it's very good cause that you have done basically asking this question, and I'll try to answer all of them to the best of my efforts basically. All right. So let's go and look at, right, one by one. Okay, so let's go to the next page and look at the question basically here. So tell me about your end-to-end testing process, right? So for this guys, okay, as I said, this is very long question, probably 6 to 8 minutes time it will take. So what I have done is basically I just remember that similar video I have done basically, and this is very interesting video basically. You go and watch this video and you will find all your answers basically, right? So this video is covered basically considering multiple phases of a project, right? So it basically talks about the entire testing project overview, testing project explanation, real-time ETL testing interview question, everything basically in this particular video. Go and watch this video guys. If you need any help, just comment on this video. If you are not able to basically find this video, just let me know in the comment section, so that I will send a link of this video actually, okay, direct link on YouTube. All right, so that you can actually watch it and that will answer all this question. Okay, so let's take up the second question then. Second question is, what is data profiling in ETL testing? I think data profiling is something that, which is basically we have not talked much about it, but data profiling meaning that basically you are scanning the data, all right, which means basically checking the data from the data quality perspective, right? How the data looks like. For example, profiling on the source data. If you are actually going to do the profiling on the source data, which means you want to make sure you have the analyze this data, and the primary intention of this, basically primary focus of this is basically to make sure we have the appropriate data quality, completeness, accuracy, consistency, right? So all these features, if we have all these features in particular data, and to ensure that we have all this feature in a particular set of data, and then we say that okay, we are actually done with the data profiling basically. So this activity is very similar to your data testing as well, right? Very data testing. Let's try to look at it basically, right? So when we talk about data ETL testing, in fact we are talking about ETL testing, right? And we do lot of tests in ETL testing, right? We do data completeness check, we do data transformation, we do data quality checks, and the third thing that we do basically data quality checks, that basically comes under data profiling. So if I look at it here, identifying anomalies, right? Missing values. So in your uh, source field, source data basically, we might be missing some of the values, right, on a particular field, and that field is very mandatory field. We want entire thing from their source itself, right? That is something that during the data profiling we will discover. Okay, duplication check in my source itself, this is also something. Identifying all these problems are basically part of your data profiling, right? So generally, and for example, data type checks, right? Different data types will be there, okay, in a particular column, right? That is also a problem basically, right? And we have the referential integrity constant and other things. These are all the part of your data profiling, right? To be very simple, okay, very uh, s- difference, very main difference between data profiling and data testing in ETL testing. All right. So data profiling talks about anything about data which is not because of the transformation, guys. Okay, which is not because of transformation, but because of the issue in the source system. All right, it is coming from the source system in that format only, and that is the actually problem in our ETL system, right? Now, data testing, what we do, we obviously cover some of the things in the data profiling, but actually, as part of your data testing, you are supposed to test the transformation part of the ETL process, not the source data part of ETL. So, if I can just summarize it, data profiling is basically taking care of correctness, accuracy, data quality, right? In your source data that we are actually getting as part of extraction. However, data testing should focus on based on the transformation rule that is basically given as part of my business logic, right? So this is the simple difference you can actually think. But in real world, we do not write only separate test cases for data profiling and data testing. Basically, we club entire thing. That's why you might see that we are also checking duplication, which is basically part of data profiling. We are also checking whether null values is there in my source or target. That is also part of your data profiling. But we are still checking that as well, right? Along with your transformation checks like filter, aggregator, etc. That is why we actually in real world, we basically real project, we actually combine data profiling and data testing together basically as part of our test case. But to know this, this is what actually data profiling. Hope this you are able to understand basically. This has to do with the data quality. Okay. Now there are several tools in the market that you can use, right? So one is from Informatica itself, right? Informatica Data Explorer. This is one of the tool that you can use for data quality checks, right? It will tell you whether there is any anomalies in the data or not. This is the source, right? This is the tool basically. Second tool is talent data quality. This is another tool that is basically to do the data profiling itself, right? Now other than that, right, so many tools are there in the market, but you can also design your own tool. For example, you can write SQL query, you can write the Python tools, right? Python scripting, Python testing, right? You can write automation framework basically, right? So using that you can define your own data profiling based on your own requirement basically, right? You don't need to pay here anything, right? This is free tool. You are actually developing your own, but for that you need to learn, right? All right. Hope this is giving you some idea about data profiling. Let's go to the next question, guys. Okay. Next question, how do you proceed after receiving requirement? This is what, right? So basically, once you are given the requirement from the team, your requirement document, what are the things that you do as part of QA, right? So how do you proceed? This is what it is. So first thing what we do, we understand the requirement. So what we will do, we will review the ETL mapping document and raise and clarify any ambiguity in the requirement, right? So we'll review it, and if I find any problem or something I am not able to understand or something which is incorrect or whatever observation we find, we raise it back to the person who own the document, right? For example, if it is a design document or it is mapping document, It can come from BA or maybe coming from developer. We need to get it clarified with them, okay, and get it corrected if there is any issue. All right. Second thing is, after completely completing the requirement understanding, we have to go and based on that we have to create a test planning and test strategy basically, right? And this should roughly few of the things that it should be covering, right? The test planning, basically what exactly you want to do testing, right? So because there is no end of doing the various kind of testing, so you have to define, okay, you want to do functional testing, you want to do a kind of performance testing, what kind of testing you are going to do, right? So that clear vision and objective you have to basically put in the objective, some detail basically, just to make sure that what exactly it is the objective of the over test planning it is, right? And based on that everything will happen. Now test scenario, in test scenario you have to really identify what are the different area. Again, you have to make sure that you are actually covering only functional test cases, database test cases, only ETL extraction test cases, performance, integration with third party tools like reporting tools, etc. What is the scope basically, right? So based on the scope only you have to identify test scenarios, right? Third thing, test data, right? Test data, and which will cover your the volume of data. If performance, then huge amount of data is required, you might ask your DBS to load the data for you, right? Some negative and positive test data to test negative and positive scenarios in your ETL process, right? And then test environment, how many environment you might need, one SIT environment maybe, or second UAT environment also. So how many environments basically you need, all those things we actually have to capture in this particular document. All right. Not only this, these are the key things that we have to do, but along with this many more things actually we have to do in real time. Okay. Now let's go to the next phase, right? So understanding requirement, test planning, and then third one is after test planning everything is done, right? Everything is approved and everyone agreed, right? All the stakeholder. Now as a test engineer I'll go and start writing the test cases basically. So I'll start writing the manual test cases. I will start developing the automated test suite, right? Test cases basically, which we can do in parallel basically. In the manual testing and automated testing we can do in parallel. Ideally it is not suggested to do in parallel, but maybe you can take a gap. For example, you are able to actually sprint wise, for example, manual test case sprint one test cases are passed, then you go and automate them, something like that. 1 week sprint ka gap is important, so that you know that your test cases, manual test cases are stable enough for the automation, right? So what you do, test case design, you actually create your manual test cases, you create your automated test cases, and then also what you do, you basically get it reviewed with the appropriate people, for example BAs, developer, and everybody, in ensure that your test cases are acceptable to them, and they are happy with this number of test cases or scope or anything, right? So these are something about the test case design phase and development, right? Now test data preparation, this is the major part basically in ETL testing, right? So this we have to basically make sure you are working with DBS and get the data loaded into whatever environment you are testing. So in the test environment, for example, you load the data there and you make sure that whatever your request is, the data is loaded. And if you need to tweak some data, you tweak also based on your positive negative scenario. You might have to tweak little bit of data just to verify those scenarios there as well, right? So these are the few things that you have to do in the test data preparation, guys. All right. Now, next phase is test case execution. Now everything is fine. Test cases are approved and prepared and everything. Test data is also done. Now you got the build and you have to start testing. So as part of test execution, you might need to run the job, right? ETL job, monitor how it loads, right? Or in some cases, you are directly supposed to actually test the data, then you go and test the data because the job will be owned by developer. They will be helping you to run the job and they will make sure the data is already loaded, all right, in your target basically, okay? So you have already test data prepared in source and the target is loaded, then you actually go and start executing test cases, start testing and raise any bug if it is required, right? If there is any anomalies, any discrepancy you came across, you raise a bug for that and assign it to developer for fixing, right? And finally, what you have to do in the test execution phase is complete the required testing as per approved test plan. Okay. So whatever test plan is saying in this phase, basically, if you see here, whatever in the test planning and test strategy phase is there, we have to basically make sure we are able to complete all of them as agreed, all the test cases. Okay. Now, last stage is basically test closure, right? So once you are happy, you are able to execute all the test cases, right? And there is no major defects pending, right? And we have reasonably achieved a good amount of test application stability or job stability in your ETL jobs, and then you go ahead and say, okay, we are going to close the test, basically testing. Before that, what you have to do, you have to go and you simply cannot just wind up your testing, right? You have to go certain process. So for that, we have to go to all the key stakeholders and say them, okay, we are done with the testing. These are the test evidence. These are the defects, and these are the things basically current as of now. This is the status of the testing. Are you happy to sign it off to wind up the testing, basically, right? And then you get approval from them. Okay, they will say okay, they are happy. And then what you do, you basically submit this closure report to everybody and say that this is the testing closure kind of testing closure report, and that's all for this kind of phase of the testing, right? And then finally you do the documentation part, and you also uh, document the learning and improvement, any improvement suggested during the course of entire testing, basically, right? So this is the step by step thing that you have to follow, right, in your real project, right? So hope you are able to understand, right, from requirement until end of the, I mean, closure of the test closure, basically. Okay. Now next question, let's go. How do you validate your source data? Again, guys, this question is very much related to your data profiling, basically, right? What we talked about, data profiling, right? So in the profiling also, what we do here, we are not talking about validating the transformation or validating the loading process. They are talking about how do you validate the source data, which has nothing to do with ETL here, right? So if it has nothing to do with ETL, nothing to do with the transformation, so what basically you do, you actually go and check the data profiling thing, right? What kind of checks you do? So these are the few checks, basically. So the step by step process, what you do, first of all, you try to understand the source system. There could be multiple source systems, right? You try to understand each of the source systems, right? And then review the document and note down the key critical data fields, basically, right? When I say critical data fields, which is mandatory for our ETL job, basically, right? Or it is mandatory for the business to get that data from the source. But what if that is missing? And that is the problem, because that is what we are actually trying to validate in the source upfront, right? Now, second thing, we also analyze what is the business logic and rule, right, on the source that we can apply, basically, right? So this is the first thing, understand the source system. Second is data completeness check. Again, this is data completeness check. What basically we do in this is we try to get the row count from the source, okay? And we actually see that, okay, this is my estimated row count in database. And similarly, if it is the source system is basically file based, then file size. So here what we basically check it, we try to gauge some understanding right here, because we don't have the target right now. Let's say we have some rough idea, okay, this much record should be there. For example, there is a file, isn't it? File cannot be 500 GB file, right? Not big. Or it cannot be like a 2 MB file as well, right? So not like that, basically. So you basically check some things, okay? So because you have only source right now, let's say you don't have target, you don't have transformation, right? But you have the given the source document, and it says that, okay, these fields are there. So what are the things that you will do? You actually base your source documentation for your analysis here, okay? Now, third checks, data quality checks. Check whether the source system is having any data profile checks, right? For example, there is null values, or there is duplicates, are there. All the data should be unique, should be having unique, whatever, primary key field is there. So all those kind of data quality checks also we have to do on the source, right? And the data format, most important thing, right? because in the source there is no control, especially when it is kind of let's say file system. In that case there is no control how you can basically maintain the data consistency and integrity, right? And in that case we have to really check whether we don't have we are all following the data formats. For example, date should be in a proper format actually, right? uh, it should not happen like in one row the date is in YYMMDD and other one DDMMYY. It should not happen. It should be consistent across that particular column throughout the record basically, right? So that is what talking about the data consistency and format, right? So these are the few things that you basically perform the source data verification check. But again, this is not something that we do in isolation. This is done together with our entire ETL testing package, right? So that is what basically, but here specifically somebody asking, then you can tell okay, because here we don't have transformation, so we cannot just say check the whether the data is transformed correctly or not. No, there is no scope here. It is only for the source basically, source data validation. All right. So these are the questions, guys, and I hope that I tried to answer this to the best possible manner I could do, right? And in the next video, we will be taking up the remaining questions from here on, basically. Okay. And again, if you are first time watching this video, do consider to subscribe this channel. We are bringing amazing content on this channel, unfiltered content basically here. So you can learn a lot of things here. And um, one more request, if you really like this video, please like it and comment as well whether you liked it or any improvement, any suggestions, whatever you feel basically. Your comments are welcome, right? So that's the another thing. All right. So yeah, that's all for this video, guys. I'll see you soon with the next part of the questions basically. And thanks again, Priya, for asking this question. I will encourage everyone to go and comment and ask those, because this kind of question, will really help not only you, and you are actually doing the service to the society people basically, right? In the community, they are also getting benefited because of your questions, right? All right. So yeah, that's all for this video. Happy learning. God bless you. Bye.